Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mile High Sports Symposium. I am JT Matthews, JT Matthews01 on the Twitter, and I am here with the I was here with the doctor, who's now gone. Oh, there he is. Nicholas Manning at DR_Manning on Twitter as well. Getting click happy over there.
All right.
To technical difficulties kind of morning. We are recording the day after the Broncos win against who do we play?
The Raiders.
The Raiders. The gross Raiders. Gotta win. Breaking a 8-game skid. We'll get into that at some point. Just to say we're just not at our normal time today, or won't be live, unfortunately. Some work stuff that came up that I had to switch my day off. So we are recording a little bit early, but we will have some fresh Broncos reaction because of that. Doc, before we get into any of that, how are you? How are you recovering from our trek to the Broncos game yesterday?
Well, I woke up in a good mood, went to bed in a good mood, woke up in a good mood. Just shocking how I don't know. It was like overall it was nice. Like our travel wasn't too difficult. Got helped out by a buddy.
Yeah.
Food was fine. Nothing like seemed to upset the day.
Yeah, it was a solid day through and through. I would agree. And the Broncos win certainly helped.
I mean, that was paramount. But
yeah, we're talking about how nice it is to go to a winning effort after multiple losing efforts.
Especially like an enjoyable one. Not like wasn't like nail biting, like it for real was just like it started out a little rocky, and then and then kind of took off. It happens when you put 34 straight points on the board.
Yeah, baby.
It tends to be more enjoyable.
For sure. Well, we got to make them wait for that because that we're going to be the bulk of our. But we got some other things to talk about really quickly. Wanted to just touch base on the Denver Nuggets. Their preseason began last Friday, I believe, in Abu Dhabi, of all places, against the Boston Celtics. They played 2 games. They lost both games. We all know preseason wins and losses don't really matter. We're just excited to get eyes on maybe some of the rotations that they'll be trying out. Russell Westbrook as your 6th man, essentially. Didn't play in the second game, played in the first game. Just want to get any thoughts from you, any feelings on how that went. I think ultimately I feel good about what we've seen so far. The starters came out, did their thing, looked fine. Everyone looked pretty good. Jamal, maybe we wanted a little bit more from Jamal just because we had the whole Olympics debacle that put everyone a little bit ill at ease. Into the season, he didn't seem entirely healthy. Yeah. Looked fine in the games. Looked like his normal kind of preseason self. I don't know that he is in game shape yet. But, I think that probably having those winter or the summer workouts with the Olympic team in Canada probably helped some of that a little bit. So we'll see. Yeah. Just general feelings on preseason thus far. Any takeaways?
Well, let's see. He scored 11 points in 19 minutes in the second game. I mean, that's not bad. Jokic had 20 in 19 minutes. So those, get out. Yep, don't get hurt. Yep, nice job. Strother, I thought, looked pretty nice. They have 17 and 29 minutes. So I think getting some of the guys a little bit of run. I liked the little bit that I saw from Saric when Saric was out there. It was nice to see some of the other guys. Hunter Tyson, not Tyson Hunter. I always want to say it the other way. I don't know why. I feel like that.
It's the problem when you have two first things.
Yeah, it's interchangeable.
Yeah.
He looked at. I think he had 9 or 10 rebounds in the second game, and not that I wouldn't have associated him with leading the team in that's not what I would have pictured for him. Right, a guy that's a stretch big. He played pretty big, and so that was nice to see. I don't know if that will matter, but I thought that was pretty nice. And then in game 1, I like what Russ brings. It's just there's like a tenacity like we had talked about last time. And then when he has the ball, there's like an energy, like he's going to blow by somebody, or there's just that expectation, which I think is nice, because I don't know, outside of Jokic, like when someone has the ball in their hand, I'm not necessarily like glued, like, so whether or not that's, who knows if that plays into anything, but I think it isn't nothing, it's another dynamic player, not as dynamic as yesteryear, and really kind of one-dimensional dynamic, but still pretty dynamic. So outside of just, it's nice to see the guys like out there again. It's cool to see videos of them enjoying the the region and the culture, and I thought that's really, like, that's once in a lifetime, right? Like, when else, who knows, but probably not going to go out to Abu Dhabi very often. And to be able to do, like, saw him riding camels, but just one, I like how some guys are like, nah, I'm not doing it. Like, that's smart. Animals sense fear. You can sense fear. Don't get hurt. We need you. But the fact that they, like, that's as bonding as bonding's going to get, right? So whatever maybe fractured last year, just based on it was an engine that didn't get a lot of oil because it ran for 2 straight seasons. That was a little oil. Like, all right, hey, like, we're gonna play a couple basketball games, kind of, and like, all expense paid trip to once in a lifetime. Like, seeing some of the videos, just some of the things that they got to see, like how, if you didn't come together a little bit, like, cut that guy, like, if it was like, I don't really remember that guy on this trip, like, I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I enjoyed it. Like you, it's nice to see him back. What about you? Any big takeaways?
Yeah, I think I liked how Christian Brown looked with the starters.
Yeah,
I think that he gives you more defensive versatility, which is nice. I think with KCP, who was a fantastic perimeter defender, but he's kind of a fantastic perimeter defender of guards only. And I think Christian allows you to be able to switch a little bit better if he gets put on a small forward, per se. That's something that he may be able to handle. Now, that's always going to kind of wax and wane a little bit, but he has a little more strength. I think than KCP, a little more length, a little more athleticism. So I think that's size. A nice.
Like, KCP has good length. Like, Christian Brown is thicker, right? And so I feel better if it's a bigger 3. He's not going to get posted up by that. It probably stops there. You start getting to the 4 range. It really needs to be a guy that wants to play out on the arc, and then. But I agree with you that I think that's a good observation. It's nice to see for sure. Yeah,
I think with I think Nikola Jokic looks dominant as ever. I think he's just fine. I think I wonder, just because there was. I think fatigue is a big factor for how the last season finished off. Obviously, he had some pretty great playoff performances, but I think he just wasn't quite as efficient as we're used to. And I think that'll wane a little bit as he gets older. But I think that if he had anything that was ailing him, I heard a little bit about a wrist issue kind of throughout the end of last season. That doesn't look to be there. His touch looks great. He looks as good as ever. They put him in a lot of double teams. He found the open man. Like, it just classic Nikola Jokic stuff, things that we don't have to worry about. He looks healthy, so that's good. I think just kind of the last bit is I'm very curious to see how this second unit ends up shaping out. And I think that Hunter Tyson could end up in that rotation somehow. I initially didn't feel that way, but I think that one thing that he brings that we need is shooting, and that's something that Malone obviously values. And I think that's something that if you're really worried about offense, especially in that second unit, or even just mixing and matching with that first unit, he's someone you can tell to go stand in the corner and knock down some threes. He brings it, defensively, even though he may be a little outmatched outside. Sometimes he at least has tenacity and gets in there. I think he's someone that's made a good impression with that coaching staff. I don't know if that elevates him over some other guys that are a little more veteran or have more experience with Coach Malone, but it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. And I think you're also looking at, in situations where you need offense, does Strother replace Christian Brown at points at that shooting guard position? I think that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. And not, I would say that I don't think that that's going to be how they open the season, not or necessarily even go to that. But I think if you really are concerned if Christian's not producing offensively like you need him to, Julian's shown an ability to create a little bit with the ball in his hands. He's shown ability to shoot. I think he's a little bit down in his shooting since last season. So there's a lot to be proven there still. But I think that second unit's just really interesting. And then you have that, Russ is a guy who pushes the ball down the floor. He goes at breakneck speed. How do they complement each other? And then I think kind of the idea with Saric is that he's going to be your Jokic 2.0. How much do they actually run any offense through him at all if Russ is your main driver of that second unit? It'll be interesting to see how they fit together. I think that's going to be a big one because I think you can pencil in Russ and Dario into that second unit already. There's no question marks there, I don't think. But I don't know how seamlessly they'll fit together, and I'm interested to see how that goes.
Yeah. I think it's going to be the age-old who's the next big off, right? And so off the bench, and we assumed maybe it would end at Dario. Is Zeke, is that still going to be a thing? Still kind of waiting. He's making good money. Are they going to try and kind of recapture what the hope was? Kind of last year it really waned, and then he got ghosted at the end of that bench. Yeah. Made sense-ish last season, but obviously you're kind of hitting the reset button. But maybe Hunter Tyson is providing some, right? He's a much more consistent shooter, or at least has. Let's see. I don't know. In the NBA, is he a more consistent shooter? I think
the rumors from camp say that he's when people are bringing up who's playing well, I think a big piece of is Hunter Tyson's shooting. And it's all like you have Zeke NBA tape, you don't have Hunter Tyson NBA tape. So right. It's I'm getting a little washed in the sauce. I think it has to be really kind of camp, and you can see like the progression on, maybe that's him. And if he can continue to show really in the preseason, because that's all you can do is the game in front of you, that he can knock down shots, that he can rebound defensively. You don't need him to be like a guy that's wiping offensive glass, but good defense, solid defense, knows his rotations, and gets rebounds when he's there, good positioning. I've never been wowed by Zeke. Kind of hope, and I think, that big injury kind of derailed it. And I think from there, sadly, it's what have you done for me lately is sports for sure. They get paid too much money to have real big feelings, to be quite honest with you. And so that second unit has to get figured out, because if it's a hit, this team is dynamic, right? Like it's the drop from Christian Brown to KCP, if there is one, I think would be pretty minuscule. If you looked at the numbers last year when he was on the floor, there really wasn't a difference. The difference is then when he is your top bench player now in your starting rotation, who's filling in, right, as you continue to go through depth. Russ, what do you have in the first game? He had 12 points, 8 rebounds, or 8 assists, 4 rebounds in 19 minutes. Mm-hmm.
And like you said, how will it mesh? Well, if he's shooting 60% and dropping 8 dimes, I don't really care how it meshes. Guys figure it out, right? But if you can get, Julian Strother is a guy that had really good production in these 2 outings, really looked great in Summer League, which was the guy that they were drafting, right? I think last year, the moment was just big, reigning NBA champions. Like there's a lot of pressure. How nice or how good they are in the locker room and all that stuff, right? Like that's... you really feel it, and then you get hurt. And so I think maybe him getting hurt is a blessing in disguise, right? Like let him slow down a little bit, work his way back in. And then there looks to be like a hunger. Like I'm good enough to be out here.
For sure.
And he's showing it, which is nice. It's nice to see Konkar back. They went specifically out to go scout him when you know him, right? Like he's been a Nugget. And so there's like a lot of, I think, pretty good pieces, but you don't know if they'll fit. And then it's like, how long? I mean, really, this is probably the roster for the year, right? And then it's really, they have to figure it out. But you got till May, guys. Like it's a long time. You got till April or May until you have to be revving, which is kind of nice. This is a team that will be in the playoffs. Probably be a top 4-ish seed. So figure it out by then. If you figure out by then, we might be at a parade. Like that's pretty dope. That's pretty dope.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the expectation should be.
It has to.
We're still in that window.
You got that when you have the 3 out of 4 and probably 4 out of 4. If we're keeping it real, MVP, like you can't. Yep, it's if we're not on a bus or whatever, fire truck, then it wasn't. It can be a good season. It can't be a great season, right? Yeah. So we're looking for a great season, and I'm encouraged by just the little bit that we've seen. We'll kind of see when they get stateside and and see some different faces. Boston wasn't necessarily throwing out their A look either. Nothing for them to gain from bringing back the entire championship roster. But it's a good. I mean, that's a good deep team that those guys were getting minutes against. So it wasn't like they're playing the Grizzlies or whatever. It's like a whole bunch of Joes and no Jimmys or Jimmy's and the Joe, whatever one. You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
Yeah.
I think the Nuggets look to be on the right trajectory, which is important.
Yeah.
And I think like you said, it'll take some time. That rotation's going to have to work. I mean, they're going to have to workshop it, I'm sure, during the season. It's not going to be a finished product by any means, but I'm encouraged that it can be better than last year, which is not saying a ton, but
but it's saying everything, because that essentially is the reason why you weren't a champion last year. Was
right.
But if that bench were a tick better. Now, if it's 2 ticks better, I mean. Look what they did. The bench with Bruce around wasn't great either.
Right.
But it was good enough in the spots that need to be good enough to complement the guys that were playing, right? And so can you get that then? Can you get the guys that when they come in, they do just enough or a tick better, right? Like let's aim for another step instead of being like, you just got to be good enough. It's like Gorgiev, like just don't suck, I guess, and we'll win. Like, right. I don't know what that expectation is. Like, hey, dude, be good, I guess. Yeah. Like, no pro athlete. It's like, I just have to go out there and be marginal, and we'll come out with a championship.
Yeah. What says that? Sometimes that guy, right?
I mean, like that you are handed the keys to a really, really nice car, and you're like, just don't wreck it, and I'm gonna,
I'm sure
all the attention I want. I'll be getting dates forever. Like, just drive it speed limit. Don't wreck it. It'll be fine. I'll be like, I'll be all right. And then you get it, sometimes you're like, but it's a Lambo. Like I got to punch it once.
Yeah, that's the Trent Dilfers and Brad Johnsons of the world right there. It's just like,
yeah, for sure.
Don't.
And my man Brad, has a ring, and then he played like 12 years after.
Yeah, it's true.
I knew when he was at Florida State that Brad Johnson was like, he's like good enough, right? Like he is every marginal quarterback in the history of the league. Smart, enough arm strength, which is like all of them, right? Like to get to the right situation. And he just rode the defense. Boom, gets to Minnesota, throwing to Randy Moss. Like,
that's true.
How?
Just don't wreck it.
Just don't wreck it. Or maybe he had vice versa. Maybe he was playing with Randy Moss first.
Yeah, I think
either way, that's good. That's a good thing to do. Like, hey, Chris Carter, Randy Moss. Yeah, how bad can I be?
Right. Let's transition to, since you brought up Georgiev, we're going to do just a quick little touch on the Avs. Preseason, as far as wins and losses, hasn't looked great. Scoring has kind of been down. I don't know that it is really an indicator. There's been some change in personnel. As made a trade. They traded a young defenseman for kind of a more veteran defenseman, but that defenseman is injured, and we ended up getting a 4th-round draft pick in that deal. And so just some little maneuvering before the season starts. Just want to kind of pick your brain. Where do you see this season leading the Avs, and kind of what's your feel going into the new year?
Well, so Eric Brandstrom, 2 N's.
Yes.
Okay. Long ends. I mean, if you sign if he was signed to a professional contract, you assume he's going to be top 7 defenseman. You must have really good depth if you decided going into the year, not only do we not need you, I'll move it over so you can see it. Not only do we not need you, but we're going to eat some salary on the way back to get a draft pick, a 4th-round pick, which I don't know in NHL how reliable a 4th-round pick is. It's a hopeful depth piece, or you take a big swing at some really toolsy, sketchy Russian kid.
Yeah. Somebody who checks 1 or 2 boxes, but there's a lot of question marks.
Maybe a lot of questions, but those 1 or 2 boxes are those are fast.
Goaltenders
can't
too,
stop, but he's super fast.
Yeah.
Just kidding. But I'm gonna butcher this name. I'm gonna give it a try though. So what I really did like is they signed Nikita Preshepov.
Sure.
To entry-level contract. I remember seeing him when I went to the game the other night as a kid that flashed. I think he's number 85. And from what I gather, kind of looking at it, he really just grinded through camp, through showings, and then getting an entry-level deal. I mean, it's a guaranteed contract, right? It's a draft pick. It would have been as good as he's a 3rd-round pick. So I don't know what the salary is for, but that part is a team like this has to get fines like that. And so it might not be a guy that we see this year, but they think he's going to be a guy that could be, a potential puzzle piece next year. And if you're able to find guys like that aren't drafted or high round picks, because they're not going to be picking in the top of the draft ever. Right? It's the Nuggets. You got to be able to find some gems. And that was pretty cool. I didn't really think of it. The guy, he looked pretty good, was kind of in a ton of plays, but I really had eyes on, how are some of the big dogs doing? And then to see that really, oh yeah, I remember that. He was around the puck a lot. So excited about that. Hopefully there's a couple more dominoes like that as they get ready to announce their roster. So I'm excited. Like the Nuggets, it's I don't really care what you do till we start getting to the Stanley Cup playoffs, and then have your ship tight.
Yep.
Have your rotations tight. Gorgie, you got to be good.
Yep.
I'm not gonna let you settle for good enough. Nope, you got to be good. And he really was after a rocky start in the playoffs. And it's going to be a fun winter season, which is nice when you have the Rockies,
Yeah, no kidding. I feel the same way. It's just, it's such a long season, and there's so many moving parts to an NHL team as opposed to your starting 5 for the Nuggets. You know what that's going to look like when they roll it out. I think to a degree, what that's going to look like for the Avs with Gabe and not Gabe, Nathan and Mikko. There are some pieces that we're waiting on, Gabe being one of those. And just, it'll take some time to kind of, for all of that to gel. I think we've got some good returning players. We got Middlestat back. We've got O'Connor coming back. Guys that are impactful guys that have been around this roster now for a little while. But I think it just takes time, and it seems like the Avs always kind of get off to a little bit of a slow start. I don't know that we can anticipate that they won't. You open up your schedule against the Golden Knights on Wednesday. That's going to be a tough game. And it's just, a bit of a grind. So we'll see how it goes. But I expect Nate to be up in those conversations for MVP again, if not kind of front running, and this team to be a playoff team. And so I think if they are falling short of that early, they've got some time to get the ship corrected. But there's expectations with this team, and they're also in a window. Nate's still fairly young, but getting older.
You're not giving time back. That's for sure.
Right. So when you have those MVP caliber players, like you're saying about the Nuggets, you gotta capitalize. I think the Avs ultimately will. They'll get to the playoffs. We'll just have to kind of see how the roster health and impact of some of those guys coming back is. But I'm optimistic. We've got Kelmakar, we've got Miko Ranson, we've got Nate.
Again, you have three of the top 10 players in the NHL.
Right.
And they're loaded. Yeah, they're loaded. It's now you got to finish, you get to the playoffs. It's not about talent, which is just crazy, right? NBA, if you have three of the top 10 players on your team, you're probably at least playing for a conference championship.
Right.
In the NHL, like most sports, like most other team sports, it's really it's the glue guys, right? It's the O'Connors, it's the Nichushkins, it's the guys who do the dirty work. Nichushkin, even though he probably is fringe when he's on his game. Sure. He's fringe top 10, but guys that do the other stuff, and they really missed that. I think last season, I think O'Connor was a guy that got hurt, that missed the rest of that Dallas series on top of, and I think you miss those things, and it doesn't matter how good that one guy is on that line for 20 seconds, next 40 seconds, you're losing in those bouts. So I agree. It's good news is they just beat the Golden Knights 2 nights ago.
Yeah.
So played them 4 times. So if you don't know them yet, I don't know what to tell you. So I bet it'll be a good game. And I'm hopeful. Come back with a dub.
I think so too. It's an 8:00 p.m. game on Wednesday. If you catch it, go for it. I'm gonna definitely be watching at some point. After basketball practice, probably on Wednesday night. So looking forward to that. But let's talk about the team everyone came here to listen to. It is the Denver Broncos, and the Denver Broncos won in dominant fashion with a 34-18 victory against the Las Vegas Raiders, a team that has kind of had our number for I think the last 8 prior to this game, the last 8 meetings they came out on.
We haven't beat them in the 2020s.
Yeah, and so we got in that monkey off our backs, figuratively, and now we need to talk about how that went down and what's next. So let's start with just overall performance. What stood out to you from the game yesterday? Any players, any units, and then we'll keep rolling from there.
Yeah, just players. I was credit where credit is due. This is a player that I really like. I'm going to start off the grid first. I had high hopes when he was drafted, I believe, in the 5th round by the Broncos, 4th or 5th round, and just really didn't make, suffered some injuries, didn't make the most of a starting opportunity. Totally different defense now than yesteryear with Vic Fangio, et cetera. That's Justin Strnad. When we were watching the game, it was there he is again, man. There he is again, man. There he is again, man. It was, and he's arriving violently, and that wasn't a part of his game. Even at Wake, he was a long, lean defender who could play safety, was rangy. He's meeting running backs in the hole and not losing, and I'm not sure what happened, what got out of his way or in his way or what he's done, but kudos to him. I think now when you have a guy stepping in for Alex Singleton, who was, heart and soul kind of guy,
for sure,
not drop off yet. Holy crap. On top of that, right now, I think you have the best cornerback duo in the league.
Yeah.
PFF has Riley Moss as the 7th best corner. And then you got Pat Surtain, who's just an absolute nightmare, just in the best of ways. And then you add Brandon Jones, who's PFF 2nd rated safety. And then PJ Locke, who had a really nice comeback effort. It was an inch away from making a play. That's a 65-yard touchdown, which still makes me a little sick. Yeah. But came back, made some plays, which in the NFL you have to do. Like, that would make me sick all game. Like, I would have lost it, And kudos to him for, like, you have to get back in there, and having a short memory. I think most of us can't. And we don't. That's why we don't. That's why we're not only physically, like, those guys are monsters, but second, like, the athletic competitive thing to let go of, this, you're riding high, it's 3rd and 10 or whatever it is, like, sweet unis, everything's great. Like, whew, Brock Bowers over my head, as the kids say. I didn't get topped, you got topped. Yeah. Run for 10, like, oh, like the air, like, gets sucked out of the damn stadium. And it's like, oh, here we go again, right? Like, that's why they beat us this many times. They're not better. They don't have a better roster per se every year than the Broncos. They're willing to do what it takes until now. And then this roster was a bunch of guys doing what it took. And then my last shout out is Javonte Williams, man. Like, last 2 games, I don't know what happened. Maybe it was like he had to get 2 years removed from that injury, because it was nasty. Like, the fact that the guy was playing last year, he tore up everything in his knee. Not 1 ligament, not 2. I think it's like 3. Like, guys, everyone's like, he looks like, he sometimes you just don't, you don't age backwards and all. Yeah, no, guys, his whole knee was gone. And he came back in 11 months to play football. Yeah. One, I think it was stupid. We probably all should have, like, that. We shouldn't have let him do that. That's on Sean. But maybe it's like, hey, like, it's not going to he can't, rehab it better, I guess. So, but he looked mean and nasty. Their ability to run the ball, was just absolutely phenomenal. And so, outside of giving up 1 really long pass play, 1 really long run play, that really skewed kind of the offensive production for the Raiders. It looked pretty even if you look at statistically, but outside of those 2 plays, the Broncos dominated, and it all happened because, they're driving and Pat Surtain takes the play. At least it's going to be 13-3, right? And you're like, there's a lot of game left, but it's not looking good, and that sparked kind of like a revolution, right? Like, the whole team just. 34 points unanswered. So 27 more points after the pick 6, or 24 points, because I guess they had to, right? So, but just like a totally different team. And people that don't believe in momentum or like the other, like, that absolutely was a game that changed on a dime, and the Raiders just couldn't get it back.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those things. I mean, Vance Joseph, we need to give as much praise as possible after the job that he's done with this unit. I mean, really relatively unknown guys outside of Pat. I mean, you're looking at Riley Moss. One of my biggest concerns coming into the season, we talked about a lot, was the secondary, and they're looking like one of the most dominant secondaries in the league right now. And I can't attribute that to anything but coaching. Obviously, there's good personnel. And they did their homework when they put this group together. But, I think it was relatively, on paper, it looked fine to your GM. But once you don't know until you roll them out there.
No. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of hope and projection in that strategy.
Yeah. Macmillan, I guess we're calling him now, has looked great. I think that we expected him to be a contributor when they acquired him, but he's been more than that. He's been maybe one of the best slot corners in the league. I mean, you're looking at this group that I was like, there's so many question marks that I'm not confident that to go into, like, hey, we've got some depth, we've got some players. And I think that coaching is just such a big part of that. I mean, even looking at your defensive rotation at D-line and your pass rushers, not a lot of big names in there that people recognize. I think some of these guys are getting a little more eyes on them now that we're winning. I think that people are understanding that Jonathan Cooper can be a force, and is a great rotational guy. Maybe not an every down guy, at least not to this point. But so when he's in there, is super impactful. I think everyone thought maybe Zach Allen was a little overpaid, but he's living up to that now. There's just a number of guys that they've brought in that are solid contributors, and Van seems to know how to take advantage of that and just kind of deploy them as needed. And a guy like Malcolm Roach had a great game. He's a guy that filled his holes, filled his lanes, and was aggressive at the line of scrimmage and just made an impact. And it's just, okay, I know what you're doing. I understand. But regardless, you're seeing impact all over it.
Yep.
Nick Benito got in there for a sack. Justin Stronada was extremely strong. We talked about that at the game and after the game. I think he led the team in tackles. And then he also pancaked Gardner Minshew on the Pat Surtain.
So much so they're like, that has to be a penalty, guys. Like,
they're like, that's a quarterback. You're not allowed to do that. But I mean, this defensive unit was just kind of the standout. And we're obviously going to talk about the offense too. But I don't know that I can single out one guy on that group. Nope. Just all around, just effectiveness and just ability to overwhelm the opponent has been impressive. And I think that this team's starting to turn heads a little bit, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Let's hop to that offensive side. Takeaways from Bo Nix. I mean, obviously that's something we're going to get to pretty much every game. We have a rookie that's kind of feeling his way through the league as he kind of goes along. How would you assess his play?
Yeah, I mean, it was disappointing at first. I think that it was really quick to check down, or the design or what it's calling for is getting there. And you and I kind of brought it up pre-show, is the shouting match on the side, right? Yeah. Drops an absolute dime 45 yards down the field. Troy Franklin, if wants to be an NFL player, like, do that. Like, it's routine. Like, you got to catch that ball.
Yeah.
And he goes to sideline, and it sounds like Sean Payton wanted a play called. They had the play, but he flipped it in the huddle. Sean Payton doesn't like that. Rightfully so. If I'm calling a play, like, run the damn play, kid. And at some point, though, you want your quarterback to be like, hey, this is what I see out there. It worked. I'm sorry. Sure. There were 3 guys open on that play, and we were yelling at him, throw the short one, right? Or the mid cross, like that one was open. We're like watching it come towards us, and then it's like, he has him by 6 yards. Good call. And whatever kind of happened there, he was hunting more often, right? Like, it looked like he was going for some chunk plays. That second touchdown that he had, stood in the pocket, took one of the chops, absolute dime. It looked like now he's playing quarterback versus, game managing. And I mean that in more of the just don't fail kind of thing, right? Like, don't get in the way. No, like, at some point he's got to be a playmaker, and he's done it with his feet quite a bit. He has enough arm strength to throw the ball deep. Like, you don't have to throw the ball. Like, how many times are you gonna throw the ball 50 yards or more ever in a game, right? It's once or twice, maybe. And he has enough to be able to get the ball to the sideline, to the deep crossers, and then obviously had enough to hit Franklin in the hands when he's rolling left. So I think through the game there was progression in, like, he settled. I think he came out way too hyped. Second, hasn't played home in a long time. I mean, that stadium there was energy. The throwback uniforms that if you're ever on, I mean, he knows he wore a Elway throwback jersey. He knew that the people were like, I mean, this was a game you and I had specified. One of the reasons I was so excited about going to it was see the damn uniforms.
And they did not disappoint.
They did not disappoint. Holy goodness. And it was the first game that the Broncos offense had 0 turnovers. Took a couple bad sacks, 1 bad sack for sure. But you see what happens, right? Like, play smart football, convert in the red zone. You're you're going to trip and fall and land on 27 offensive points, right? Like, oh yeah, they scored 3 offensive touchdowns and oh yeah, like it didn't feel like that, right? It didn't feel like they were a unit that converted in the red zone more, and didn't give the ball back. You saw what happened with Gardner Minshew, and if Gardner just dirts that ball, they probably win that. Maybe they win that. They most likely are definitely. It's going to be a bloodbath, right? Like they're in it, and maybe attrition wins out. But that turnover, it's a backbreaker. And Bo's turnovers in the first game were backbreakers. They couldn't overcome it. Same against Pittsburgh. And then as that has reduced, you become more efficient, more effective with his legs and things like that in the red zone. So I'm stoked about where they're at. I think this next game, will be another really good opportunity. He's going to get back-to-back games. The Chargers, I think they're going to be well coached. And then, a really emotional game in New Orleans that Sean's going to really want to win. If they come out 1-1 out of the next two, heading into play Carolina, you assume at least 2-1. They're 5-3 coming down the stretch. I think that's a good place for this team to be. So I'm very much encouraged. It was nice to not only get a win against the Raiders, but a resounding win, which they needed. So, really positive things are brewing.
I think so too. Yeah, I think just winning by that margin is such a morale booster. For fans, we've been waiting for a game like this for a while, and we haven't had one really of note that showed the growth that this team and potential that this team has. And I think that's a big piece of it. Bo, I think, like you said, started slow, but I was impressed by some of his throws down the field when they actually threw the ball down the field. I like that he's not afraid to throw over the middle. I think he had that absolute dime that was dropped, which sucks. What's going to happen is a rookie receiver too. He's going to have drops. He's not necessarily known for his sure-handedness either. And then that touchdown pass to Josh Reynolds in the back of the end zone was really nice. He just dropped it, between the layers of the defense over those linebackers, only where his receiver could catch it. A really nice throw. I just think the more we see, the more opportunity he has to do those kinds of things, the more we'll see growth. We got to wrap here pretty quick, but just some quick predictions going into the Chargers match up this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, it's a team that's going to have to try and run the ball. They don't really have a lot of dynamic playmakers outside, but they're going to come off a bye week, which for them, Justin Herbert getting some rest is absolutely needed. But they haven't asked him to be that good, but he also hasn't been. I think that happens when you don't have a ton outside. Much more improved run game, which you assume would happen with Harbaugh. And then on defense, I think their schedule hasn't been that great. So I don't really know what to make of them. Names from yesteryear still. Right, you got Derwin James, who's a phenomenal player when he's healthy. Joey Bosa, who's a phenomenal player when he's healthy. And Khalil Mack, phenomenal player when he's healthy. So them coming off a bye week, I think will be a challenge. But it's a team they've had some success against, obviously, over the last several years. So I expect the Broncos to continue to build on and come out 4-2.
Yeah, I think that it's a win. I think it's again, it's just a beat up team right now. If they're not healthy, Justin Herbert's banged up. He's obviously kind of the heartbeat of that team, and so minimize the running game as much as possible. Jim Harbaugh teams are known to be able to run the rock. They've got a good offensive line there, at least some really nice pieces that are kind of shaping into a good unit. So I think you just gotta, the secondary. We can probably play a little closer to the bus. Have some guys ready to kind of support in that run game. And with the way our secondary has been playing, it just makes me feel even more confident that we'll be able to game plan against their offense. Final score prediction?
I think it's going to be 24-17.
Okay, I like that. I'm going to go 27-17. 13 Broncos win.
Nice.
I just think that I don't know that I have any more concerns about the Chargers than I did about the Raiders, really, except for Justin Herbert. And if he's not healthy, then it puts him in a really tricky position. Yep. But we got to wrap today a little bit early, guys. We apologize for that, but we appreciate you sticking with us as usual. He's got a big game coming up this weekend, something to keep an eye on against K-State. I think that should be an interesting game and a good one. Avs first regular season games on Wednesday, and then the Broncos play the Chargers this weekend.
People.
So we got some things to look forward to. But thank you. We appreciate you. And remember, if you need a sports prescription, make sure you ask a doctor.
Holla at your boys.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so what?